Hello, everyone. Welcome to Endwell Live, where almost on a weekly basis, we're having a conversation with a special guest about how, in this ongoing time of crisis, we can collectively find community and best support each other, support people facing serious illness, caregivers, families. I'm Shoshana Ungerleider, a physician and the founder of Endwell, where we're focused on making the end of life and everything that surrounds it a part of life. And I hope that you're all safe and healthy out there and hopefully breathing clean air. And if not healthy, I hope that you're on the mend. We're coming to you today to find community in each other and to support our physical and our emotional health through this virtual conversation. So this week's guest is a good friend. She's a former Endwell speaker, Rebecca Soffer. She's the co-founder and CEO of Modern Loss, which is a forum for loss and mourning with really a contemporary context. She's co-author of Modern Loss, Candid Conversations About Grief, Beginner's Welcome. It's an awesome book. She's been published all over the place. The New York Times, Marie Claire, Refinery 29. She's spoken, at places like Amazon and HBO and then Endwell. So we're going to talk about Modern Loss, her work, and how COVID has shifted the experience of grieving, I think, for all of us. As usual, we're going to talk for about 20 minutes and then open it up to you, the audience. If you are joining live today, please say hi right now in the comments. Tell us where you're from, give a little wave, and please ask questions throughout or make comments throughout the show and share this conversation on your own page so others can join the conversation. And so with that, hi, Rebecca. How are you?
Hi. I'm, I started telling people I'm hanging on and I'm hanging in.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy. You're like brightening my day, this conversation, because I love you and you're across the country and I get to connect with you. And, you're so modest. You just mentioned Endwell as like the last tiny thing that I've spoken at. And it's hands down my very, very favorite public speaking experience of all time was at Endwell. So it's just an honor to be here.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm so glad to see your face. I wish we were in person, but maybe soon. So tell us, how did your personal journey lead you to helping others to start conversations on grief and loss?
Sure. Well, I think it's safe to say that this was not an active goal of mine in life. This was just not something that I set out to do. I went to journalism school at Columbia. I wanted to be a producer for political satire. That's kind of what my track was. I was a producer at the Colbert Report, and that was my thing. That was, where I was going to spend my career. And instead, as we know, life just happens. And when I was 30, my mom was killed in a car accident right after she and my dad had dropped me off after a family vacation camping. And, I was single, I was 30, I was starting my career in New York City. And I had this great expectation of what my life was going to look like. And all of a sudden, from one second to the next, those expectations just went out the window. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't even know what, the next hour was going to look like. And, as it happened, my father passed away 4 years after my mom died. So I was 34 and both my parents had died. And, in those 4 years, it became increasingly obvious that loss and grief is just, such a stigmatized topic in our culture. And I do believe that in the years that have passed, it's become less stigmatized, but it's still stigmatized, actually. I think that if you put 100 people in a room, the majority of them are not going to know how to talk to each other about this stuff in a comfortable way without making the person who's moving through loss feel like the onus is on them to make the other person feel comfortable. And as a single 30-year-old who was surrounded by a lot of other single 30-year-olds who were focused on, making jokes all day long, because that's what I was getting paid to do. It was really hard to navigate that reality of trying to build up my life while also, the stark fact that I was living with deep, deep loss, and I didn't know how to reconcile the two. I didn't know how to, kind of just like toe the line between both of them or allow them to come together in ways that made me feel like I could, be living with loss and also be living a really wonderful, rich life that was full of resilience and post-traumatic growth. I didn't have a lot of examples of how I could do that because it's so stigmatized. So modern loss really came out of that personal experience. And we launched it in 2013. My partner, my co-founder, Gabby Berkner, and I launched it in November 2013. And in essence, it's an online publication which publishes narrowly focused personal essays around one aspect of the grief and loss experience. And when we say one aspect, that's like the long arc of it. Like these could be written like 25, 30, 40 years after you lose somebody. And it can be about sex or finance or career choices or humor. I mean, loss touches everything because it's like the most universal experience we have. So what we want to show people is that they're far from broken for going through something like this, that life can be really amazing and really rich, not just, in spite of, but sometimes because of the hand that you've been dealt, if you really take stock of it and think about the time that you have left and how you want to spend it. And, that you're not alone. There are a lot of other people out there going through iterations of what you're going through. And so let's form a community and pull each other through it.
And especially now, right? I mean, I think that, the definitions around grief and loss are beyond now just losing someone that you love or care about or a pet, or, it's about, a loss of the certainty about the life that we had planned to live during this time, especially. You've described modern loss as a place to share the unspoken or unspeakably taboo, as well as the unbelievably hilarious. What have you experienced in this online, community that surprised you the most?
I will say a couple things. First, I think, a lot of us live in our own little bubble on social media. I am definitely not the exception to that rule. I have my little Facebook group and we're mostly all liberal and like we mostly, think a certain way no matter where we live. And that's because that's like an extension of my circle, of my actual circles of people in my life. However, what I have found when it comes to this modern loss community, and we have a very wide readership, we're all over social media. On Facebook, we have a public group that has thousands of members, and we have a private group, which is so amazing. I love it so much because it's really like peer-to-peer support. It's not therapy. It's just like people who have been dealt this hand, who are really like offering advice or venting, screaming into the cosmic void to an empathic ear. Sometimes you got to scream into the void. I do it like every morning. And they're just like getting access to so many different viewpoints and so many different experiences and cultures and mindsets and ages, like the wisdom of the timeline, like someone who might have gone through something kind of similar 20 years beforehand can be giving feedback to somebody who's just going through it now. And that is what the most surprising thing to me has been, because when you launch something like this, it's like it ceases to be yours. It's not yours as soon as you make it public. It's whatever it's going to be. And when we launched this site, I remember telling Gabby, okay, like we boiled this big pot of pasta. Like, let's just like throw it against the wall and like see which strands are going to stick, because you don't know. All I knew was my own experience. But what I found is that these groups are amazing because, as loss, I mean, it's really like the most universal experience that we can all share, even beyond taxes, because as we found out, like not everybody pays those. Just saying. So if we're all dealing with that and we're different people, then we truly have found our common denominator. And we truly have found a way to connect with people who we might ordinarily not connect with, and to really see eye to eye when we do that. And to me, that creates more empathy in the world. It creates more understanding. And that is the goal of modern loss. I mean, really to be media that matters and to really, heal the world in its own small way. And I think that's been the most surprising thing the other surprising thing is like how many people love gallows humor as much as I do. How many people just like need to laugh and need to laugh even in like the abject, darkest moments. I'm not disrespecting the loss experience. I am saying that it's freaking hilarious sometimes because it's absolutely ludicrous. And if you can't externalize that humor with somebody, sometimes what more do you have?
Absolutely. I love that. You said modern loss is about media that matters. I think that's I love that sort of tagline, even though it's not your tagline. But so if you're just joining the conversation, please say hi in the comments. Tell us where you're from. Give us a thumbs up, like, and share this conversation on your own page so other people can join us. Rebecca, the title of an article by Teju Cole is "We Can't Comprehend This Much Sorrow." That's on your Modern Loss site. In this time of really incredible sorrow, how are you seeing modern loss and other online platforms play a greater role in helping people cope?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I would say that we're really trying to fill in where other coping mechanisms are failing now, because we all have to come up with coping mechanisms, right? And we just have no choice. When we make a choice that we're going to like go on in life, then we have to just go on as well as humanly possible. We owe it to ourselves to do so. So we figure out like what kind of activities make us feel better, what kind of people should we hang out with that make us feel better? What kind of jobs should we go to that make us feel better? Or trips do we take? Or exercise classes? And all of a sudden, from like what, March 9th or whatever to March 11th, those vanished. We weren't able to go beat the hell out of a punching bag at the gym any longer. We weren't able to see our girlfriends for a drink on a Tuesday night and just like look at them eye to eye and just feel the energy, you know, like that energy that you can feel that's comforting without even having to say anything to the other person. We just were robbed of all of these wonderful, helpful, healing things that we have worked so hard to do, like build up our team, our resilience. And so what we do have are these virtual opportunities. And I think that Modern Loss was really well set up to fill in these gaps because we have been online for 7 years. I mean, primarily, first and foremost, we're an online publication. And that publication, sure, it has personal essays and it has an advice column and legal and financial and therapeutic resources on modernloss.com. But we also have these amazing online groups. We have these, you know, our Instagram feed. We continually post prompts for people just to make sure, just checking in. Like, I'll post an image that is kind of maybe a little obnoxious, but it's really relatable. And I'll put like a little post saying like, you know, how are you hanging in there? Or like, what are you doing to stay sane today? Or something like that. And people love the invitation. They feel like that's their time with a friend, or maybe that's their time to like do meditation or something. They just need that invitation to be able to share in the conversation in ways that, you know, they can't do outside of their houses so much anymore. And also we have started, you know, and many other organizations as well have started virtual sessions. So we have a Patreon campaign, which is, you know, it enables people to give us pledge a small amount every month so that we can keep giving back all this free content to everybody. And in March, when COVID really hit, I started these virtual sessions. So several times a month, I offer a session with like a financial therapist or even like a pastry chef doing rage baking to, you know, someone who's doing improv through loss and teaching people how to laugh and look at.
Can you tell us please what rage baking is? I've never heard of it.
I think I just like pulled that out of my head. I rage bake frequently. If you want me to FaceTime you the next time I'm doing it,
yes.
Listen to like really loud David Bowie, and I sing very loudly to that song, and I kick everybody in my family out of my house, and it's very, very therapeutic. And then I eat what I make, and that's the best part. So rage baking is something I highly recommend to everybody. But yeah, but like all of these virtual sessions are, you know, they're not just with therapists. Like they're with authors. They're with people. You know, we have one with I won't use an obscenity in this Facebook Live, but like there's this amazing woman. She's a young widow and she's like this phenomenal writer and she always makes me laugh. And she hosted one called This Effing Sucks, an hour to your damn self for young widowed parents during COVID-19. And it was a virtual happy hour that went so well that we made it a monthly thing. And so I find that these, online platforms are really doing their creative best to fill in where these in-person interactions, are not able to happen. And it's been overwhelming and a grind and like a really big pivot. Because I think what was going on in my personal life at that time, but it's been so incredibly worth it because to get feedback from people who are so overwhelmed and maybe they have young kids at home and they're homeschooling them and their mom still died from cancer last year and they still have to do that meeting with their boss on Zoom while all of this is happening. We're giving them that breath and we're making sure that we bug them enough that they choose to take that moment to sit with what they need to go through for 10 minutes or an hour or what have you.
I just think it's so obvious, but for me, it's like so incredible to think about the ability of technology. So whether it's, streaming video or social media for all the bad things that it brings into our life.
Yeah.
I mean, during COVID, my goodness, it's just been such a blessing in so many ways. And so I'm constantly grateful for these platforms and ways that you and I can talk. And Endwell, of course, has had to think through a lot of this stuff as well as probably
right.
most folks have. How have you seen the conversation around loss and grief change since the start of COVID? Do you feel like there's more of this sense of kind of a shared experience, whether we've lost somebody or not?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen it change. I mean, look, I've always been talking about this stuff. And I will say, and I'm sure that you will understand. Well, I mean, you're an actual medical doctor who specializes in palliative care. So you're, probably were surrounded with a bit more understanding group of minds than I was. But when I was about to launch Modern Loss in 2013 and I'd go to a dinner party and people would be like, so what are you working on? I'd say, well, I'm going to launch this publication and I'm really excited about it. It's about this long arc of loss and it's honest, candid conversation about it. And there's going to be humor and it's going to be really amazing. And 9 out of 10 people would look at me with this side eye and some sort of reaction that's super dark. Why would you ever want to do that? That's really depressing. And in my mind, and sometimes out loud, I would say, well, I mean, no, actually, first of all, I don't view this as a death site, actually. This is very much about life, about living. This is about the people who are above ground and still have to carry on and make the choice to carry on. And we want to encourage them to do it in ways that are really rich and wonderful and encourage them to remember, as some of your Endwell speakers say so well, that the time that we have left is very finite. And how are you going to live that time really, really well? We want you to live the best life humanly possible. And sometimes that involves taking some risks and making some hard choices. And we want to be at your side to help you do those things so that you can live well. And then you can end well. Sorry, just saw that opportunity. So I feel there wasn't that openness so many years ago. And now all of a sudden, there is this openness because every single person on the planet is living with loss, right? We're all living with, look at where you live. You're in Northern California. We're all living with climate grief, climate fear. We're living with loss of our past lives that existed up until mid-March and our present lives, which we don't understand what look like right now. We're just scrambling to keep our heads above water, and we're living with the loss. We're grieving what we thought our futures were going to look like. And they're still probably going to be okay, but we don't know what they're going to look like anymore because we don't have any timeline. We're grieving the loss of control, and we never had control, as you and I know, but we thought we did. And, we're grieving the loss of that, mirage of control that we had. And, we're also, a lot of us, grieving people who have died. Be it to coronavirus or to cancer or to slipping on a banana peel, if it happened this year or if it happened 5 years ago or 20 years ago, in this time of great societal loss, we're still grieving like our personal losses. And so it's like grief on top of grief on top of grief. And that makes us so much more open. Like we're cracked open to the core right now. And I think the only good thing about that, because it's so painful, is that we're open to letting other people in, and we're open to like sharing our stories in a way that's like really raw and vulnerable and effective.
Yeah.
And that is when you truly can affect change. Like that's the only way. I mean, look at the Black Lives Matter movement, that, you know, look at all the marches that happened. It's because people were just bubbling over, like they couldn't contain it any longer. Now we're living with so much loss and grief, we can't contain it any longer. We need connection. We need to connect with others. So I think that this conversation has opened up, and I think that this eagerness really allows people to like get to the nut of it more quickly.
Yeah.
And that's the good thing, is like we can talk about like our shit a lot more easily without the platitudes, without the niceties, without like, you know, just like the requisite 10 minutes of small talk. We really can get deeper. And to me, like as a talker, shocking, that's wonderful. And
Yeah.
I think that that gives me hope for humanity. Not a lot of things are giving me hope right now for humanity, but that's one of them.
And so if you're just joining us, I'm talking with Rebecca Soffer. Please say hi in the comments and ask your questions. We're going to get to your questions very soon here, and please give this conversation a like. Rebecca, you wrote a book proposal while your 6-year-old son and your husband had COVID. You didn't have daycare and all the other stuff. Talk about this process and the book in the face of these, you know, incredible challenges.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a year, you know. So both my husband and my son, who was in kindergarten when COVID hit the scene in March, they both got COVID, and they were both very sick. And you know, I went from having a full-time nanny and an office and, you know, like some like semblance of like a schedule in my life, to being a caretaker of 2 people in my family, and also a caretaker of my 3-year-old who was healthy, and sharing a room with my 6-year-old. And also I kept remembering, oh, I also have a dog that needs to be walked. So, and no childcare and no school. So it was like all of a sudden, and this was in mid-March, like this was the week that everything shut down. That's when they got sick. And so, you know, I couldn't get groceries. We couldn't get COVID tests. I mean, no one knew what it was. It was still new enough that like, it was too early days for any sort of like doctor appointment or conversation that might yield any sort of helpful information. It was just like all these question marks, and it was so overwhelming. And I look back on that time now, and not only does it feel like 100 years ago, but it also feels like it happened yesterday, which to me is like very like grief oriented. Like when I think about my mom and her death, she died 13, 14 years ago. And I always think like, oh, it feels like 2 minutes ago, like that I last saw her, if I put myself in that evening, but it also feels like a billion years. And so it's like this very familiar feeling, this trauma that we're all going through. And it was terrible. And I had no way to work. And so I was just so overwhelmed by all of these stories of grief that I was reading online. And at the same time, I have never done as much media as I have done in the spring and summer of 2020, because all of a sudden everyone wants to talk about this. Everyone wants to talk about grief and loss, and how do you create meaningful ritual when you can't be with other people? You know, all the things that you and I have been doing just like in the trenches for so long that no one seemed to really, you know, care that much about. All of a sudden everyone needs to talk about them. So I was just stretching myself so thin with all of these jobs, and like escaping to my guest room to do interviews with like a bed in the background. And I just was like,
I've done that.
guilty. I mean, like, I don't even know how messy this scene is behind me. So I apologize, Facebook. But, you know, but it would just became so clear that there's just like so much grief in this world, and so many people continue to need this invitation to talk about it, to explore it, and to like interact with it, instead of just reading like prescriptive what they should do. And our first book, which came out 2 years ago, is a compilation of these wonderful essays. And Gabby and I both wrote extensively for it, as did many amazing people, many of whom like Lucy Kalanithi, Brian Stelter, who hosts Reliable Sources on CNN, and Amanda Palmer, who's a literal rock star. This book, I wrote this proposal to be an interactive guidebook. So not a journal, not like how are you feeling today? With like a rainbow or like a sunset, because that makes me just like want to throw it across the room. And it also makes me feel like it's asking me to do too much work. I wanted to create like an interactive workbook that provided really helpful information about resilience, post-traumatic growth, and also just like commiseration and humor to people moving through loss, and be it like in that first year, or this is as pertinent 10 years down the line, because as you and I know, you live with different iterations of your loss, as you move through your life. Now I have 2 little kids, and when my mom died, I didn't have kids. And so now I'm like a parent parenting without her parent. And I wasn't beforehand. So it takes on these different facets. And so I really wanted to create a handbook that you could get at any point in time that would provide all these really helpful prompts that would help you build up resilience, like build up your team, build up your support network, and also like encourage you to figure out creative ways to stay connected with the world around you, which I think is very important in times of grief. We are very, our gut, our visceral reaction sometimes is like hide under a rock. And while that serves its purpose, you cannot do that forever. It's not good for anybody. And so, the goal.
I'm so excited to read whenever it comes out. Like, I'm so excited to read it. I think this idea of like an invitation and the interactivity of it, I think is going to be so powerful. We have to get to audience questions. Okay. And we have one from Jessica. So she says, tonight is the Jewish New Year. It's a time of reflection and a time when we repair ourselves, our communities, and the world. This has never felt more relevant for many of us in this very challenging time. How are you reflecting and moving forward?
Wow. Jessica, that is a very soulful question. First of all, Shana Tova. So I saw a post today that I actually reshared because I was like, yeah, it was Shelsky's Deli in Brooklyn. They have a t-shirt that's like sitting outside and it says, 5780 sucked. And that's what that's what it says on the t-shirt. I was like, it totally did. And I loved it. I would wear that shirt. And so tomorrow is 5781. I'm excited for that. So we can start at least messing up a whole new year and not feel like the weight of an entire previous year on our shoulders. And I think that for me, I'm not a religious person. I am definitely Jewish. I mean, I'm Jewish. I'm cultural Jew. I am spiritual. I love the ritual. I love the tradition. I love the prompts. And for me, what the high holidays do for me is I really appreciate the annual reminder to really take stock of my life and take a good hard look at where I'm coming from, where I am right now, and where I want to go in the future. And I think that the Jews are smart. They figured out a way to like get you to do that every year. And that's what I do during Rosh Hashanah and these days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And one of the things that I love doing is I actually think your Reboot, right? An organization that we are both part of, it has this amazing project that I would recommend to anybody. It's called 10Q. Sorry. Reminder to get my brisket that I'm making tonight.
Oh, I love it.
So it's called 10Q, and it's 10Q.com, I think. And it's 10 daily questions about your life and where you're at now and where you see it going, where you would like to be next year. And you enter your answers, and it goes into a vault. And it's secret, like no one can access it. And then next year, right before Rosh Hashanah, you get sent back all of your answers. And it's so amazing. You get to see like how far you come or like how far you haven't come. And then you can feel like really bad about yourself. But it's really wonderful project. It's open to anybody. Like you could be a complete atheist. You could be, an Orthodox Greek person. Greek Orthodox, anything. And it's just a wonderful tool. So I do that. And then the other thing that I really do in terms of reflection and moving forward is, I would say, quite frankly, this year I feel very stuck. I feel very scared, as we all do. I feel very confused about a lot of things, a lot of big things in my life. And when all of those things are like creating a maelstrom around me, my visceral reaction is to like reach out and grasp ritual.
Yeah.
And so, as you just heard the ping, I am picking up a brisket. I am making, my grandmom's brisket recipe. I'm making her kashan bow ties. I'm making Smitten Kitchen's apple cake because I didn't really love my mom's apple cake, and I'm sure she'd forgive me. And I'm just going to like do a deep dive into these foods that are so comforting and that remind me of these amazing times in my life with people who loved me unconditionally, people who I don't have anymore. But I can access that feeling through the ritual of cooking these foods and forcing my children to eat them under threat of no dessert. And to me, I do find that in times of sheer turmoil, ritual keeps you grounded, be it a religious one or just like I always walk around the block when I feel like I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. So,
Deborah has a question. Do you know the name yet of the handbook? It's not out yet, right?
no, it's not out yet. I've probably written like 2,000 words for it, but it's in here. It's called the Modern Loss Handbook, and it is going to be published by the Running Press, which is a beautiful imprint. I'm very, very excited. They're known for really gorgeous, like art quality books. So it's going to be cool to look at. You're not going to want to throw it across the room. Well, maybe you will, but you're not going to want to hide it. Let's put it that way. It's not going to be cheesy looking.
Amazing. Well, you'll have to let us know when it comes out so we can share it. So, we've reached the end of our conversation, Rebecca. Thank you so much. Folks watching, check out Modern Loss. It's an incredible site, as well as Rebecca's book and then the one that's coming up soon. I want to let everybody know about Endwell's virtual experience on December 10th called Take 10. This is a free online experience/event featuring celebrities and unsung heroes, where we'll celebrate and share stories and openly discuss things like serious illness and end of life and caregiving and grief and loss. You can sign up now at endwellproject.org. Thank you again so much, Rebecca, for this conversation. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Please stay safe and stay well out there.
Thank you for having me.